Imagine being trapped in a crowd so dense you cannot even raise your arms to defend yourself, while 50,000 killers slowly close in.
You can hear the screams of the men beside you, the crunch of bone, the tearing of metal, but you cannot move. You are completely paralyzed by the press of your own brothers in arms.
This is not a nightmare. This was the terrifying reality for the largest army the Roman Republic had ever assembled. In a single afternoon, tens of thousands of men marched into a psychological and tactical trap so perfectly designed, it remains the gold standard of military genius over 2,000 years later. How did an unstoppable force get completely annihilated by a much smaller enemy? This is the anatomy of a slaughter. By 216 BC, the Second Punic War was ravaging Italy. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who had famously crossed the Alps with his elephants, had already dealt humiliating defeats to Roman forces at the Trebia River and Lake Trasimene. Rome was desperate. They needed a decisive victory to crush the invader once and for all. Abandoning their recent strategy of delay and attrition, the Roman Senate did what Rome did best. They threw overwhelming manpower at the problem. They raised an army of staggering proportions. Numbering between 80,000 and 86,000 troops, it was the largest force assembled by the Republic up to that point.
Led by two Co-Consuls, the aggressive Gaius Terentius the Varro and the more cautious Lucius Aemilius Paullus, the Roman plan was blindingly simple. They didn't need complex maneuvers. They had sheer mass. They would form their heavy infantry into dense, deep formations, like a massive human battering ram, and smash right through the center of the Carthaginian line.
To the average Roman legionary standing in the ranks, victory must have seemed like a mathematical certainty. Look to your left, look to your right, an endless sea of Roman shields and spears. How could anyone stop this?
On August 2, 216 BC, near the town of Cannae in Apulia, Italy, the two armies met. The battlefield was a dusty plain bordered by the river Ophitis. The river anchored Hannibal's left flank, ensuring the massive Roman army couldn't simply walk around him on that side.
Hannibal commanded roughly 50,000 men, a significantly smaller force. If he fought the Romans head-on, his center would shatter under the weight of their deep formations. So he didn't. Hannibal understood Roman psychology just as well as he understood the terrain. He knew they wanted to charge straight up the middle. So he gave them a target. He deployed his infantry not in a straight line, but in a crescent shape bulging outward toward the enemy. In the very center, closest to the Romans, he placed his most unreliable troops, Gauls and Spaniards. But on the far edges of the crescent, hanging back, he positioned his elite, battle-hardened African heavy infantry. It was a formation that looked weak where it was actually flexible, and strong where the Romans weren't even looking. Hannibal himself stood in the center with his men, sharing their extreme danger. He was ready to play the matador to Rome's charging bull.
The Roman horns blow. The massive human battering ram lurches forward, kicking up a blinding cloud of dust. 80,000 men roar as they crash into the Carthaginian center. The impact is deafening. Exactly as the Roman consuls planned, their heavy infantry begins to push the Gauls and Spaniards back. The Carthaginian crescent slowly yields, bending inward under the sheer pressure of the Roman advance. For the Roman soldiers in the front ranks, it feels like victory. They are gaining ground. The enemy is retreating. Encouraged, they press forward eagerly, funneling toward the center, losing their rigid formations as they smell blood. But they are blind to the geometry of their own destruction. The Carthaginian center isn't breaking. It is absorbing the shock. As it bows backward, the outward crescent becomes a deep U shape. The Romans have marched themselves deep into a pocket, entirely focused on the retreating men in front of them, completely ignoring the elite African infantry standing quietly on their flanks.
Then, the trap springs. Hannibal gives the order. The Carthaginian center stops retreating and holds the line. Simultaneously, the elite African infantry on the left and right pivot inward. They march forward, driving their spears into the exposed sides of the massive Roman block.
The Romans are stunned. Their forward momentum abruptly halts. And then, the final blow. Earlier in the battle, Hannibal's heavy cavalry had smashed the Roman horsemen on the flanks and chased them off the field. Now, those victorious Carthaginian riders returned. They sweep around the back of the battlefield and smash directly into the rear of the Roman infantry.
The U shape is closed. The encirclement is complete. It is the perfect execution of a double envelopment maneuver. A smaller army has just completely surrounded a larger one.
What follows is not a battle. It is a mass execution. The outer rings of the Roman army are being systematically butchered by the Carthaginians. As the men on the outside fall back to escape the slaughter, they press against the men on the inside.
The Roman formation compresses, tighter and tighter. The claustrophobia is unimaginable. Men are squeezed so hard by the bodies around them that they suffocate. Survivors reported that the pressure was so intense, Roman soldiers couldn't even draw their swords. They just stood there, paralyzed in a sea of armor, waiting for the Carthaginian blades to reach them. The slaughter lasts for hours, dragging on until the sun goes down. Consul Lucius Aemilius Paullus, bleeding and refusing a horse to escape, dies fighting alongside his men, as do 29 military tribunes and numerous senators.
The casualties are catastrophic. Between 30,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers are killed in a single day. It remains one of the bloodiest days in ancient military history. Carthaginian losses, by contrast, are incredibly light, estimated at only 6,000 to 8,000 men.
As night falls, the battlefield of Cannae is a landscape of unimaginable carnage. Hannibal has achieved the impossible. He has engineered the ultimate tactical masterpiece. His cavalry commander Barca urges him to march on Rome immediately. In 5 days, Barca promises, you will dine in the capital. But Hannibal hesitates. Despite the crushing victory, he lacks the siege equipment and reinforcements to take a fortified city like Rome. He refuses the suggestion. Barca replies with a legendary rebuke. You know how to gain a victory, Hannibal. You know not how to use it.
He was right. Rome did not surrender. They refused to negotiate. They simply raised new armies, refused to fight Hannibal in open battle again, and slowly ground Carthage down into dust over the next decade.
Cannae proves a terrifying truth. Even the greatest numerical strength can become a fatal weakness when weaponized by a superior intellect. But it also proves that a flawless battle does not guarantee a won war.